All in favor?
Sorry.
Okay, the agenda has been adopted. We have any commendations for tonight?
Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Okay, yeah, so I want to bring up our spelling bee champion, Ava Anderson. Come on up, Ava. Ava has come a very long way, as we talked about before at a previous board meeting, just to reach the National B. She had to be not only the top speller in the 6th grade at Nyssa Middle School, but also the top speller in the county among 6th graders, and then the top overall speller in the county to represent us at the National B. And at the National B, she did extremely well among 250 spellers across the nation. Ava finished 49th. She reached the quarterfinals. As you know, anybody, if you've tuned in to any of those quarterfinals or finals or semifinals, the competition gets pretty stiff pretty fast back there. Those are some highly qualified spellers, and we're really proud of Ava to have finished in 49th and looking for great things going forward. So congratulations, Ava. Thanks for representing us so well. What was your favorite moment about being back there? Because I know you spent almost a week back there with your family.
I really liked all the things that they had for us. Like they had like this trip to Planet Bird, and they had workshops there. So that was fun.
Yeah.
What grade are you?
6th grade and going into 7th grade.
So the spelling bee goes up to 8th grade?
Yeah.
So for a 6th grader to do that well is pretty impressive.
So next year, maybe she'll
Yeah.
be
What's that?
next year.
Yeah, we're expecting a higher finish.
Can I ask what word got you?
Octonary.
Oh, I didn't spell that.
What does that mean?
She can spell it now. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
Is that the only commendation?
That's it, yeah.
Okay. We do have a visiting patron, Dallas Waldo of Waldo Insurance. Would you like to make your presentation?
Sure. Every year we come before July 1st to this meeting to just talk about the renewal of the property and casualty and workers' comp insurance, so I'm here for that purpose. Last year I remember standing here trying to explain why such an increase in insurance with reinsurance costs, et cetera, et cetera. If you go clear to the bottom of the page that I handed out to you, that we were very happy with the premium this year. It only increased 3.08% overall. We've been seeing 15 to 20% increases the last few years amongst our schools. So we're very happy about that. We have the insurance written through a pool called PACE, Property and Casualty Coverage for Education Trust. And I did a quick search today. I think there's 332 school districts, community colleges, and charter schools that are insured in this pool in Oregon. I believe all but 3 schools in Oregon. Those are the 3 large schools that are big enough to self-insure. So it is our, not just really our only option, but it is truly the best option. A year ago, with the continual increases, we did go to market, and we found a couple of carriers that would write schools. And just so you know that we do go to market from time to time. And for comparable premiums, you could find something a little bit less in premium, but the coverages were not even close. Where we have $20 million liability limits, those other carriers would only offer $1 million per occurrence and $2 million aggregate plus an umbrella. So we feel good about PACE. And this is just, we've already done our work with Crystal and Darren to make sure we've got everything covered, all the property on there like we should, the autos, mobile equipment. So this is just a very high level review for the board. The property coverage, the total property values that we have This year, $68,460,877. In 2019, Pace had a company called CBiz come in and give an appraisal on a handful of the buildings, the bigger buildings, the ones that they wanted to catch up on. So that was in 2019. That's free of charge to the school districts. And so for the next 4 or 5 years following 2019, they'll just do a inflationary increase. So they increased the value of the buildings and contents, etc., by 4% this year, which we're fine with building costs these days. We do have earth movement that's changed from earthquake to earth movement and flood. Auto coverage, physical damage, per the schedule that we keep up with all year long, thanks to Crystal and her team. We have liability, auto liability at $500,000 per occurrence, and that includes the non-owned and hired auto. So anyone that is an insured, which an insured would be board members, you're insured under this program. Any employees, any volunteers. So if an insured goes on a trip, rents a car, in the course of doing work for the school, then we have liability insurance for a hired auto. And non-owned, we have the same $500,000 per occurrence. Non-owned just simply means if you drive your car in the course of work doing something for the school and you are the cause of an accident, there's coverage for that. We have uninsured and underinsured bodily injury coverage again this year at $500,000 per accident. If someone hits you, hits one of our insureds and doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough insurance to cover the damage, PACE comes in and picks up where that insurance ran out. Important coverage. On the liability coverage, as I mentioned, we have $20 million per occurrence. Also a $20 million aggregate for the year. That's incredible limits, really. Coverage includes Type A and Type B. Type A is bodily injury and property damage. And liability is insurance we buy for other people. So if we're the cause of bodily injury or any property damage, this is where coverage A comes in. Coverage B is for wrongful acts and employment practice liability. Wrongful acts, this is where you're covered as a school board, as the decision makers, for different things, misstatements, errors you might make, actual or accidental errors, negligence. So the board is covered under this liability policy. Equipment breakdown, power surge, a panel blows, our new HVAC system, or correct me if I'm wrong, is it new yet? Or are we the HVAC system? The upcoming one. There's coverage for that if an outside source, a covered cause of loss, blows a panel and the system goes down, or refrigeration, etc. There is crime coverage for $500,000, which covers employee theft, funds transfer, fraud, forgery, alteration, deductible of $5,000. And one of the tougher coverages to get right now that we're seeing across all businesses we work with is cyber liability. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but we do have $1 million per coverage period for cyber. They're getting stricter and stricter on what our IT needs to do to secure our systems, and so every year it's just getting harder. They were able to secure that this year for the schools. Violent acts crisis expense of $50,000. God forbid if there's a violent act, there's a little bit of money to come in afterwards and help with the counseling and kind of sorting things out. So as I said, last year premium was $202,528. This year it's at $208,762, with just a 3% increase. I read today on PACE's site that the average increase for all the schools in Oregon was a 7% increase, so we came out ahead this year. On the back, we also get workers' compensation by SAFE Corporation of Oregon. And I just put a little rundown starting in 2018 up to this current year. This year we're paying $47,990. There was a slight increase because the way workers' comp works, it's a 3-year running. And so every year, a year drops off and a year's added. So this year, a year dropped off that had fewer losses than the year that they just added. So that increased our experience modification from 0.87 to 1.01. But overall, that's average. That's still very good. We see experience mods 1.5, 1.7 often. So happy to come here again, and thanks for having me. Any questions? Yes.
My children tell me I watch way too much TV, but there have been a lot of things on TV about catalytic converters.
Mm-hmm.
So, my question is, are we covered for catalytic converter theft under the auto coverage?
Yes, you are. Theft is covered. And that's actually a good point. That has been one of the main claims across many carriers is a catalytic converter. But we are covered for theft.
So if someone goes in to our bus garage or whatever and takes all these catalytic converters, we're covered for all of them.
You are covered for all of them.
Or even, I was
Our
thinking,
vehicles.
so we have high school kids parked on an overnight trip, and somebody comes and does it while their cars are parked on our property.
I'll get back to you on that.
Thank
one.
you.
Yeah.
You do have a lot of kids that leave cars on.
I believe that their insurance would come first
Sure,
place,
Sure.
but I will check on that.
I have a question on the Violent Act crisis expense. How come that's so low?
Yeah, that was fine.
Yeah, and I don't have the rest of it in front of me, but I think, just speaking from memory today, looking at this, I think there's only maybe three or 400,000 total for all the schools
For the whole state.
for the whole state.
Because
And
50,000, if kids started needing counseling, it would get burned up real quick.
Super quick. Yeah. So, yes, I don't know how to answer that. They do get that insurance from a reinsurer, same as their cyber, so maybe they have problems
Is
getting it.
that new?
No, we've had it.
Have we?
Yep, and it's stayed steady at 50,000 since I've been here since 2018. And along those lines, cyber, it's something to start thinking about as a board, I believe. Cyber insurance is getting more and more needful as breaches happen often. There's a possibility PACE goes out to the reinsurance market and tries to find coverage for us. PACE is not covering the liability. They buy reinsurance for that. And every year it's getting harder for them. So one of these days, I believe that we'll have to start getting quotes outside of PACE, where we'll see premiums
For cyber.
for cyber. Yeah. Yeah.
So can you give us a projection? I'm just thinking in terms of next year's budget, if we have to do that sort of thing.
We've seen similar schools and the public entities around here that have gone from 5,000 to 25,000 in just this year in cyber coverage.
In their deductible.
In there.
Just their premium. And it's been interesting because they think, okay, if we get all these in place, all of the right IT requirements in place, then we'll have lower premiums. And it's not the case. It's just that they'll actually get quoted. So that's how tight the cyber market is getting.
Chris, will keep that in mind.
Got it.
Next year.
So we also have to have all of the things in place that they want us to have in place in order to even qualify for.
Yeah, and PACE, we filled out the application recently, and they've given us, okay, this year we're going to require that you do this and promise to do this next year. Next year, you're gonna have to fulfill those promises and then promise to do this for the fall. So they're kind of stepping it up, but the coverage still is weak. because it's like the crime or the violent act. It's $1 million if we have an event, but it's only $5 million for all the schools in Oregon. So one big school on the other side of the state gets hacked, they could gobble that up.
So is that a case where we maybe need to look at in getting additional cyber liability as in now?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that even available?
I don't even.
Yeah, it is.
It's available.
Public entities and schools are getting hit hard, and so it is going to be a number that we'll be surprised by. A year ago, it was fairly inexpensive, and in just 1 year's time, it's tripled in a lot of them. So we have, personally, we don't have access to all the markets, so we use wholesale brokers that have access to all the insurance markets out there. So we would send an application in to one of our wholesale brokers, they spread it out, and we're able to get a lot of options. If you would like us to start looking now.
Yeah, is there any way you could get us a quote or something so that maybe for next year or something, if we need to do something?
Yeah. And even if you wanted to purchase it, because it would be away from PACE, but PACE is limited, but it would be away from PACE, we could have a different date on it, and it wouldn't have to be July 1.
Right.
That would make me feel a lot more comfortable to, at least investigate or look at that sort of
Look at our
information.
options.
Mess up Christmas.
Is there money in the budget for that?
Well, Dallas, what did you say that our premiums went up? 3%? 4%?
3%, yep.
I really think I accounted for way more than that, so we might actually have it in our budget.
So it's
Depending
possible
on-
to add it for next year, maybe if
Yeah.
we could get.
Next
Or
year
do
is
something
in
this year.
July 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. Because I went crazy. Maybe that's a good
Well,
thing.
last year it went up
Right.
like
A
12.
million.
We went up, I should have looked before I came, but it
It was a lot.
was more than 10.
Yeah,
I
I
think
thought
it
it
was
was around
12%.
12%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we might be good.
Yeah, we
And
would
it's already in the
appreciate some
budget.
quotes if we could get some
Okay.
in the future.
I know the right people to reach out.
You get those to me and I can share them with the board.
Okay.
Perfect.
I'll work through Adam. Adam Frank.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions for him?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, each of you should have the copy of my report. Current enrollment, as you can see in person, the end of the year at 1,190 students. My Tech High currently has 68 students fully approved, with another 20 students in process. So we're approaching the 100 students, which is kind of what we thought this first year as we're navigating how to do the paperwork, the interdistrict agreements. Number 2 there, the Title I-C audit. We're working with ODE on this, continuing to cooperate with them. Some of the, there's no findings or recommendations yet from that audit, but what they have asked me, they never did approve our budget narratives, even though we had submitted them back in October, November. And so they've started speaking to me about the budget narrative process. And they had a few corrections, and I can share those with you if you'd like. But the main thing they wanted us to do was to involve our consortium partners, which I think is a great idea, and I didn't realize to what degree we should have been doing that. So I have been working with the superintendents, both from Vail and Adrian, to do that, and it's been a really good process. I've appreciated Alicia McBride from Vail was not able to attend the meeting, but we had it. She did email some of her thoughts, but we worked really hard to try to hear what she was saying. I will reach out to her again tomorrow. And then Rochelle Meyer from Adrian did come, and we had a good meeting, Gabe and Rochelle and I. And so we feel like that felt like a really good process. You know, when we're trying to be more transparent, more open, more involved, more like, you think about the migrant students in Nyssa, we have a whole bunch of them. And so it's easy to have that critical mass to do some service and activities with that many families who are close to our district. But we also have, not as many in Adrian and not as many in Vale, and so sometimes those families don't have access to the same services, so we're working at trying to make sure they're involved. So that was one of the good things coming out of that. Mrs. Morinaka attended the meeting with our architect, number 3 there on May 16th, to talk about the HVAC and air AC project on top of the high school. Part of that meeting, if you remember, Mrs. Morinaka, is they spoke with us. We talked again about some of our hopes and wishes for the project. A lot of unknowns at this point. We don't have costing, how much all that's going to cost. So what they were going to do was tour the buildings. They were going to get into the crawl spaces and look around and see exactly what a lot of that entailed, and then drop schematics and plans for what that's going to look like. So project is scheduled to begin spring of 23 when school is out. I don't know if they're going to want to jump the gun on that, so we'll see. But they have plans to spring of 23, a year from now.
Did Jesse, I know that Jesse took the individuals over to the building and was going to show them, all this. Did Jesse have any information about anything they said?
Basically what I put here is he said he helped them show them all the replacement machinery that needed to be replaced. The other thing that we wanted to make sure the board knows is the HVAC systems in the auditorium, they were not part of the original bid or plan, but they're the same age as the machinery on top of the high school. And so as we think about the money that we have for that, our hope is to be able to have a remodel of with the high school office on the end of the building, but I don't know if the money that we have is sufficient for all of that. So it just really depends on construction costs at the time. So, but we wanted to be very transparent with the board about the fact that the auditorium is also in need of that replacement machinery too.
What about the gymnasium?
It's all part of that. So it is. That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question. When we talked at that meeting, and we're talking about the gym, they're just the auditorium and everything. So I don't know that. It's a good question because I was under the impression that the cooling system that we have in the back of the cafeteria that we spent. Some of you who were on the board at the time who purchased that was very expensive, $250,000.
Yeah,
I believe that was the gym. So that's a good question. I'll have to pursue that. Classified negotiations are settled. The contract is in your packet for review and approval, as is certified. Both of them are in there. Had time to look at those. Several of you were on those negotiating teams, and you went through the process with us. It was lengthy, and it was going back and forth, but that's negotiations, right? And I think in the end, our employees, I hope for the majority of them, felt quite satisfied with that. I don't know if I'm going to get any nods out in the audience or anything, but it did feel like a good process. It felt like a respectful process. Nobody walked away hating on each other. I think it was good. And then the grant consolidation, the colorful handout I gave to you, the state has responded, thankfully, to a lot of input received from superintendents and grant writers around the state to try to consolidate a lot of the grants that we have to write to fund our schools. And you will see the first one on there, Mr. Jackman, you've seen this. It's the High School Success Act. It's called Measure 98. And the student investment account is the one I manage. The red one there, orange, whatever color that is. The SIP is also one that I manage, but it also, CTE is a lot of our high school that we do. And then the other two are not ones that we do a ton, but what the state has tried to do, all of these grants in the past have required a certain amount of community involvement, a community participation, and instead of trying to hold 6 different meetings and getting people in here to give input and to understand what it is we're talking about, they're consolidating all of them. So Mr. Jackman and I will be working with, of course, all of our staff and our community, hopefully, to begin a lot of community involvement in giving input on these. So we will educate people about what these grants are, hear what they have to say, and do our best to try to meet everything. As you know, it's impossible to meet everybody's input or requests, but we need to listen. We want to hear what people have to say about that. So the SIA, as you know, is very much been a board involved only, but we have involved our community to a degree as well. So that's what one of the board members was asking Mr. Murray about the playground, or Mrs. Monk, sorry, about the playground. That's SIA dollars. It's purchasing the new playground equipment. So when's that getting put in? Come on. That was already in. Anyway.
They're going fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we do have some hiring concerns.
Yeah, I have a
Yes, go
question.
ahead. Absolutely.
On the CTE,
Yes.
who do we have here managing that? Is that?
Mr. Jackman, Chad Cook, a lot. Who's that? We're working with Jerry Peacock on that through the DSD.
So it comes in the way of pathways dollars, and so each program receives funding by certain criteria. It's based on how many people continue and do 3 classes in the pathway, and how many get certifications, and by that they're funded. And so it's our CT teachers, it's Anna Long, it's Chad Kirchink, it's it is Andre DeWitt for nursing. And
Carlton's good for foods, or that's not one of them. Not certified
Police is not a police program of study, unfortunately.
for
It
CTE.
isn't?
Not for CTE.
It's a wonderful CT elective, but it is not a state approved program of study because of licensure restrictions. For the, and I don't want to do a tangent, but for it to be an approved program of study, you have to have the right certification for the instructor, you have to have a student club that goes with it, and then you have to have a pathway that leads to certifications. And so it didn't meet the criteria, unfortunately, in that case specifically, because the instructor did not have 2,000 hours of industry experience in that area. And so he's certified for the states, but there's an additional CT certification. It's similar to what we're struggling with our welding. We have 2 wonderful welding instructors that are getting kids certified, and it's a wonderful experience. It's keeping kids in school, but they don't have that 2,000 hours of industry experience as a welder. And so it's a great elective, but it's not an approved program of study. And it's the approved program of study that brings in the revenue from that grant.
You know, when you talk about 2,000 hours of experience, that is only 1 year.
It's only a couple, yes.
And so I'm surprised. And I take it that you essentially manage all the
Manages the
individuals.
So I oversee those teachers. The programs, it's interesting. Jerry Peacock is the one that makes sure that everything is in place and that money is received and used. And so we're fortunate to have him as a regional CT person. And then as Darren has said, for the Measure 98s, that's previously Chris Carlton has been managing that. And as they've consolidated these different grants, that's going to be back with the administrative team, like myself and Dr. Johnson. So, and that one specifically is what funds our efforts with dropout prevention, CTE, and college and career readiness. So.
You know, I have a real big interest in the CTE program, so I'd like to sort of be kept up on, you know, what's going on.
And you should.
And you will.
It drives all of our electives, and the research shows that it works. It's not what we used to call vocational ed, where you had your kids that went to college and then you had your CT. That's not the case anymore. Research is showing that the students that are in CT go to college at the same rates, but they stay because they know what they want to do, and so they actually complete college at higher rates.
So those 2,000 hours that they have to have, is that actually working in the industry, or can they gain those hours by teaching that class?
They have to have it in the industry as a certified welder. And so they're teaching the kids everything they need to know, and they're passing the tests, and the students are getting certified. But as far as being the approved program to study for the state and getting that revenue from the grants,
And they
They
can't
don't meet that
use
criteria.
TVCC as the certifier. They can't use TVCC's guy to certify them, and it still doesn't count as the.
So previously we did that. Previously we had, I think his name is Mr. Hyde.
Yes, Mr. Hyde.
And he was actually the TVC, is what they called it. BSD hired him and he serviced, I think, Bell,
Nyssa.
Ontario. And that worked really well. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to hire someone either, so. That was a really good deal.
That was a
For
big
like,
loss.
if I remember right, I can't remember the exact dollar amounts. I think we paid like 14,000 for that person to come and teach the classes and basically provide our whole advanced welding program. And of course, can't hire a teacher for that. We were getting a very good deal by consolidating 3SD with the other districts. So Mark Redmond is like she was here on how can we do that more often? So
Another question. I'm sorry. Do we have the possibility of having like a criminal justice component? The CT, I've talked to so many kids who are interested in that sort of thing.
Used to have it.
That's how Donnie started.
What's that?
Isn't that how you started?
What?
The high school did have
Taking the, you didn't do it in high school?
No, high school. I did so when Terry Thompson was the chief here, he was running the criminal justice class here at college.
Right.
And that's when we started that my senior year.
Right.
But the cadet program wasn't available until actually we started back up when I started doing the SRO job here in '99.
We can check into that.
the short answer is yes, but it requires finding the right teacher because for a CT program, the teacher's everything. And then of course, having the money either through a grant or the general funds for the base staffing. And then I have to be careful with how many classes we add because they kind of all compete against each other. And so pretty soon it comes to the point where we offer all these really neat classes, but students are not able to take them because they all get scheduled on top of each other. So.
You guys are creative, you can figure something out. So, and the reason I ask is because I have talked to several high school kids who are interested in criminal justice or an area that relates to criminal justice.
I can tell you right now, there's a huge need for getting people in
Yes.
because they're expecting a lot of sort of shortage in it right now.
Okay.
So I'll do that.
No, those are good questions. In answer, so just so the board knows, I've been texting over here a little bit. It reminds me that that camera is actually working because Jesse's been texting me. And so, people are listening from home. So Jesse was, he reports that the architect and those who were here gathered all the information he needed, walked through the auditorium that he says, from what they were saying, it seems unlikely there will be enough money to do both auditorium and high school. So kind of indicating that the high school office remodel is not going to be. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I don't know if he was saying if we do the office remodel in the high school, there's not enough for the auditorium. So I don't know. I'll check into that and let you know. And then number 7, we've already done number 8. Ava was here, and I'm glad we got to recognize her. That was pretty special. And then the hiring concerns, as you know, we have it's a small applicant pool in many cases. Some positions have a large applicant pools, good ones, and then others not so much. Right now, we're struggling with our high school music. Both of our teachers have resigned. It's because they don't like the high school principal. Just kidding. I'm kidding. That was a terrible joke, Brett. Brett's a wonderful high school principal. Mark Lasnick had retired from Idaho, came over here and gave us a few good years, and would just like to be retired. He loves it here, loves the administration and the kids. And Gretchen Longwell, as we all know, has been so fantastic in the high school choir and music. And, you know, I don't know all of her reasons for resigning, but she is going to be very difficult to replace. I am the licensure person in the district, and so when we get people applying for positions that they're not certified for, I have to write a lot of letters to TSBC and communicate with them regarding these people. Everybody has to have a bachelor's degree. And so we have discussed several strategies here for this, Mr. Jackman and I, and the ad council actually, to try to figure out how to fill this. And our high school music program is very important in this community, but you know, have you been to any of the band and choir concerts recently? There's not as many kids in choir as I have seen in the past. When I was here previously, it was a big flourishing choir program. There's not as many kids now. They're wonderful, those who are there. There's just not as many. Although the middle school, Araceli, how do you feel like your numbers have been in middle
It'll
school?
fluctuate. Sometimes the band will be bigger and the choir will be bigger, but it just kind of has gone back and forth. I think band was a little bit bigger this year.
Mm-hmm. The numbers have been pretty good in middle school.
Oh,
And we have a really good music program in the elementary. But again, I think Mr. Jackman says sometimes we are competing with different interests. If you have a choice between criminal justice or, you know, if they conflict at the time that you want certain things, FFA or music or PE or all the electives you have. So the 8-period day is good in some ways to give kids lots of options. It's tough in other ways because it gives those more options that kids pull from one program to another. Is that correct, Mr. Jackman, to speak like that?
Yeah.
So we are contemplating how to resolve this. One of the thoughts that we have of how to fill the high school band and choir, we are aware of 2 people who are currently in college, have expressed interest that they would like to be here, but they're a year away. So to hire a certified, not a person with a bachelor's degree who may or may not be a band or choir teacher as a placeholder for a year, that's not a really great option. We don't really like to do that sort of thing. But that's kind of the worst case scenario, I believe. Well, worst case is not find anybody. That would be the second worst, and we're hoping that we can expand our reach as far as advertising to attract more people here to apply. So far, we don't have any applicants for band, is that right?
I have one for band, I have one for choir, but licensure would have to be resolved.
That person does not have a bachelor's
Do
degree.
not have a bachelor's.
I think that is a big point of concern for a lot of the students too. I have one daughter going into middle school and one daughter going into high school who are saying, we're not really sure what we want our schedules to look like because we don't know who the teacher's gonna be or if there's even gonna be a program.
Right.
So that certainly makes a lot of scheduling conflicts for everyone, for teachers and
A lot of uncertainty.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
Basically, this could kill our music program,
We're hoping that is not the case.
but that really worries me,
We do have,
really worries
we
me.
have just hired a person from Adrian to be our elementary music teacher. And I don't say this in front of Mr. Murray, just kidding. We contemplated placing her at the high school. I think her preference is to stay at the elementary. But our high school programs are extremely important to maintain. So we hope to attract employees, applicants who will apply for those. We're just expanding our reach, I think, is what we're saying right now.
And what about the special ed search? Did we fill all those positions?
Continuing that, I'm trying to think of all the hires that we've had on there.
they have.
There it is. What's that?
They've all been filled.
All been filled, or so?
One's contingent upon licensure, but she does have a bachelor's degree and she's working on her master's. And she's open to going back to school to get the SPED certification. But yeah, they're all filled.
Okay. Okay, that is my superintendent report.
I have a question.
Yes.
I had asked you several times about applying to that House Bill, what is it, 3040 grant
Yes,
grant, and you said you got it in.
we did.
When did we hear anything? That is the
Good
grant
question.
for retention of teachers.
Teacher recruitment and retention. So, as with many things from the state, when we initially hear what we think it's going to be and then seeing what you're able to apply for, it's a little bit different, but we were able to apply, and I'm trying to think, the associations, certified and classified, they've seen it, and I can share all of it. Have I shared it with you?
No.
I thought I did. Okay, I will share it. I will share that application with all of you. When do we hear back from the state? I don't know. That's a good question.
And I had another question. I was driving by and I noticed the kids out, for summer school and such. And as I recall last year, we had an expanded summer school program, not just for the migrant kids, but for several other kids that we received state funding for. That was a grant.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back when I was the legislative policy person. Kate Brown had signed a bill, House Bill 5202, about summer school grants for this year. We did not qualify.
We did not apply.
Why did we not apply?
I'm trying to remember the reasons for that. We part of the issue we had last year was with our migrant program, trying to mix the two. It's a challenge to mix the two because the two programs need to run separately, and it's difficult with our migrant program as large as it is to do that.
We could have run them at different times.
We could have had one in July. Probably. Yeah.
So I'm just that concerned because that is quote unquote free money. And that would help, I would think, a lot of our kids. I mean, we have a problem with kids when they come back to school. We could have a late summer school that sort of prep these kids. Because as I recall, that was for elementary, middle, and high school, I believe. Can't remember, I have to look that up. And are there any other grants that we've heard about?
I'm not aware of any. No.
What about McKinney-Vento?
That is ongoing. Yeah, that's our homeless grant, the McKinney-Vento. We have that every year. So
do we have to reapply every
we do
year?
every year. Yeah, it used to be known as Title 10. It's the McKinney-Vento, and we do have Mr. Hawkins manages that one, but Jacoby Hernandez is the one who runs it and takes care of the needs for the kids, the homeless kids. So
when was that grant due?
in the fall, typically. We've been running that all year long. So.
But I mean, you have to apply for it the next year.
Yeah, so
So-
it's every year we write that. So.
Okay, so when has it been written and sent in and everything?
It's all year. Yeah, we send it in the fall and it's approved thereafter. I can look at the dates on the budget narrative, but yeah.
Oh, and speaking of budget narratives, back to the Title 1C, you discussed the budget narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That budget narrative that you were talking about, that you were working on with Rochelle and Alicia, was that for this current year?
It is.
Why?
It had been submitted in the fall, as I said earlier, and the state never did approve it. And
Did
so
you get information that?
we had been trying to figure out why it was not approved, and we finally did hear back, I'm assuming it was because of the audit. And so, as Crystal knows, we're only able to claim 20% of money if the budget narrative is not approved. And so, the state finally did respond to us recently, which is pretty late, but understanding that it was likely due to the audit, the re-interview that we're undergoing. I don't have full reason for that, but we jumped on that as quick as they had sent us their suggested corrections, revisions. So Yeah, that was, it's typically done in the fall. We will continue to do that in the fall, but since we hadn't heard back from them, we had no option of what to do. We just had to wait for them to approve or not approve or give us feedback, so.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't give us feedback before. And my other concern, Darren, is in the email you sent to us, you indicated that the meeting that you had with the other superintendents was a great learning process for you. I am just a little bit concerned because we have to apply for this every year, and
it was a great learning process for me to be involved with them. That is what I was referring to. We hadn't been involved with them to that degree. The state is asking us to have a sit down, and that's what we did. That was the learning process for me.
Okay. All right. Anything else with the superintendent's report? Okay, Crystal, I think we're ready for the 2 reports.
Okay.
So bear with me because it's my biggest month of the entire year. I just have to go through with you guys. I gotta find the agenda. Okay, so there was a lot of different things in your packets. Hopefully we can go over them and get them all approved. The first thing in your packet, I had to do a supplemental budget for our current fiscal year that we're in now. And that supplemental budget is for our ESSER $3 that we did spend this year. The budget for fiscal year 22 that was adopted, we didn't budget any money. I think we just anticipated we weren't going to spend any ESSER $3 this year. But because we have, and it's not budgeted at all in our budget, I had to do what they call a supplemental budget. So we have spent about $90,000 of those funds throughout this year. So I'm seeking approval for the board to adopt the supplemental budget so I can add it to our budget. And then when I get audited in 1 month, they don't say, hey, you spent money that wasn't in your budget. So that's the very first sheet in your packet.
And where does that money get pulled from?
ESSER,
Just from ESSER, okay.
Yes.
Sounds great.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay, motion carried.
Okay, the second thing I have in your packet, now this is a budget resolution. It's different than the supplemental budget because I actually did budget Title 1A funds. But what I didn't account for in our budget that was adopted is the carryover funds. So the second thing I have in front of you is a budget amendment to approve increasing our current budget for fiscal year 22 by about $80,000, and that is the carryover money of Title 1A. And Title 1A funds, I wrote in the amendment, just so we all are on the same page of what they are. They are funds to provide all children significant opportunity to receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education, and to help ensure that all children meet challenging academic standards. Title 1A to our school district is provided to our elementary school. So our middle school and our high school are not Title 1A, just our elementary. And our elementary school serves a larger population of children from families experiencing poverty, and so by providing additional resources, as Title 1A money does, the program is intended to help close the opportunity gaps and thus the achievement gap that some students experience. So this is just asking that we amend our current budget to be able to spend those Title 1A carryover funds, and they are carryover funds from school year 2020 to 2021. And that needs to be voted on.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to accept this?
I'll make a motion to accept this resolution as presented.
I second.
All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, then I'm going to jump. We're going to stop talking about this year's money. We're going to talk about next year's money. And I think Dr. Johnson helped me last year present this. I don't know if you wanted to this year. We just kind of copied the agenda from last year. But so I thank you, first of all, to our budget committee and to the members that showed up to the budget meeting that was about 2.5 hours long. But the next paper in your packet is a summary. This is what got posted in the paper by law. We have to do this. It has a column of our actual dollars spent from the year 2020, 2021. Then this middle column is our budget that we're in right now, and then the final column to the right is what I proposed on the 3rd of May, and the budget committee approved and is recommending to adopt, for the board to adopt. So that's our, hopefully what we're doing tonight is the board will adopt the agenda. Darren, feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything or.
Well, I'm just appreciative of the board being there and the budget board. A budget is a huge thing, and it was even bigger this year. And Crystal, I think, did a really good job. Hold that up right there for all to see. So we went through that page by page, right? And there's all the federal grants in there in addition to all the individual accounts that we spend out of it. So it's really summarized right here. And certainly if you look from year to year to year, the district is in a strong financial position.
Yeah,
We
so
hope it continues.
yes, it's increasing, and the budget did increase a lot that we proposed to the committee. But that's because of these ESSER dollars, especially ESSER 3, which is over $3 million. That's been added to the budget. So that accounts for the large jump in the budget from this year versus what we will spend next year.
So we'll come out of it pretty quickly when the remodel or the upgrade is done.
So the overall budget that's been approved by the budget committee for next year is a little over $31.6 million. So if there's no questions on that page, I think I answered a lot of questions in the budget meeting. Hopefully got them all out of the way. But the next page, this is the actual resolution of adopting the budget that every school district must do, and ESD. So this has 5 different sections. So first, we have to, there's a resolution of adopting the budget. So this is just the breakdown, the overall budget of, what did I say, 31.6 million. And then there's a second part of resolution for imposing the tax. And that's at the same rate as last year. And this is for our the taxes that we receive. And part of that is for our LGIP account for the new middle school bond. All those taxes go into that account when we pay our debt service payment. And then resolution for categorizing the tax, imposing the tax and categorizing the tax. So pretty much this sheet is a breakdown of the first sheet, which is a breakdown of this. Lots of paperwork. So that requires a motion.
We also have to make a motion.
We can do all of those at once though.
You can do all of those at once,
I'll
and then the
make
next page we have to do separate.
I'll make a motion that we accept the budget as presented, the proposed budget,
I second that
including
motion.
all of E.
I second the motion.
All in favor? The motion is carried.
And then the final thing that we have to do for our budget for next year is we present to the board what is called GASB 54. This document is saying that there's 2 funds that we are committing the ending fund balances of this year. As we roll into next year, they can only be used for certain things. And so the first fund is our Fund 310, and that's our debt service fund. That means everything that's in that fund only goes to pay off our debt service. We can't use it for payroll, we can't use it for electricity, it's just for our debt service payment. And then the other one is Fund 440, which is our facilities management fund. We're also saying that we're committing that amount of money in that account will only go to improvement of our district buildings and our facilities.
Okay, so we need to vote on this also separately, 1 and 2, or?
No, you can just do it as one. Since it's
Okay.
one document.
Somebody want to make a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve the 54th resolution as presented.
Second?
I second
All in favor? Okay, the motion is carried.
Okay, and now to confuse everyone, I want to jump back to this fiscal year and go over our May numbers. So skipping the summary page, the second page of your packet is the breakdown of the general fund, has actual numbers for the month of May. Our revenue came in a little over 1.2 million. Our expenditures, 1.3 million. However, our expenditures exceeded 1.5 million. So we spent about 173,000 more than we brought in. It's leaving our cumulative balance that we're moving to June to use at a little over 3.1 million. Now we don't receive a state school fund payment for the month of June, so we're going to use that money in our cumulative balance, to pay all of our expenditures for the month of June, which is really, really big. It's our largest month of the year. So expect those numbers to be very high when I present them next month. After that is just the breakdown of the taxes we received from the county. After that is our middle school bond operating statement. I was so hopeful that we'd get enough taxes to pay our debt service payment, and we fell a little shy. But that's okay because we had budgeted for this scenario in our budget and budgeted an internal transfer. So that I had to do that in order for us to make our payment. So our projected bond balance at the end of the day, I'm projecting it at $22,877. And that money is in Fund 310, so it'll just build and build and build in the coming months as income taxes come in, and we will pay our next debt service payment in December. So following that is the breakdown of the account and then the taxes that came in. And then after that is our operating statement for our early head start. We ended the month of May, $34,884. And a reminder, our biggest expense for our early head start is our payroll. And then we buy diapers here and there, but it's pretty much payroll. And then do we have a food service statement? Because I don't have one in my packet. I think I did it, sorry. Food service ended May at $88,319.40. I looked at the numbers. We had, I believe it was 18 days of service and a ton of field trips. So that's really, really what helped push our revenue up this month. Food cost is out of control, as we all know, but numbers are looking really good.
Maybe we should do more field trips in the rest of the year.
Yeah. After that, I have the approval of the bills report. I did want to point out, though, just so you are aware, on page 12 of that report, kind of halfway down in the middle, you'll see the numbers 256. That's our Fund 256, which is ESSER 3. We did receive our first invoice from Design West Architects on the high school project. So expenditures are starting to come in for that project. So I wanted to point that out. And I was looking, I pulled the invoice on my phone. I believe this invoice, it's only 25% of the first phase of the services they'll provide us. So, but we have until September of 2024 to get that money spent. I'm sure we'll spend it. So, and then after that is our payroll report for the month of May. And that is all I have for you guys. Thank you.
Okay, so shall we move on to the consent agenda? Lots of hires.
Yeah, I'm glad to see so many hires.
Yes, do we have any questions on this before we adopt it?
I have a question.
Why? I have some input.
Great, because I'm sure you'll answer the questions that I have. First of all, on the minutes of our last board meeting, I gave Megan a correction. She needed to capitalize Carpenter for Sandy Carpenter's name. It's minor, but I did note that. And then when we look at these new hires, I see that Mr. Lee Long and Ms. Anna Long are back. I have a great deal of respect for both of them, but I would like to know, if you could fill us in just a bit.
Let's talk about that. I don't know if you have specific questions.
Is that a closed session conversation since it's about personnel?
It could be, but also.
You're correct.
I'm just seeing a yellow flag.
But yeah, as far as the particular circumstances surrounding them, one thing I want the board to be aware of, and this is probably going to be an executive session deliberation, but it's okay to say it here. So we have had employees resign before and leave and come back sometime later. I don't know the history of every employee. So and maybe the board does, maybe there is history here, but I'm not remembering people resigning and then coming back. So then the board accepted the resignation, right? And then the employees come back. Because it was accepted, we had to post it. And so we did interviews. And so we interviewed them as part of that process because that process had already begun. But they were hired back now before the effective date of the resignation. So the effective date of the resignation was the end of their contract, which is June 30. And so now they're hired back. So the question is, for the board's consideration, longevity pay. Did they resign? Did they not resign? Do they lose their longevity pay? You know, there's a couple of other situations. So just for board to consider, Lee and Anna, and of course, that will probably be an executive session, but I want the board to be aware that this is a unique situation. We're so happy to have the Longs back. They're wonderful people, as are we all for all people who have applied. We feel like we have good people. Theirs is just a unique situation. And frankly, there's some people who've resigned, but we want to go back and say, hey, you want to reconsider? You want to come back? And then what would happen with them, right? So it's just Lee and Anna's situation is unique in that they have been hired back before the effective date of the resignation letter. So is there a gap in their employment? So anyway, just for the board's consideration, that's some future date.
In regards to process, I can share that we did do a true process. We interviewed all certified candidates, and they were chosen by our committee as the best candidate.
Right.
So
Yes, it was
we did go full process.
Very full process. Very full process, yes.
What about Mrs. Carpenter? She resigned and is she just coming back as a retired?
Retired. Yeah. Brett.
Similar to what we did with our other, Kim Blanchard and David Blair. She applied back for her position. She was interviewed and it was approved.
Were there other certified people applying?
What's that?
Were there other certified people applying?
No, she was the only applicant.
And this is just for 1 year?
Yes.
As with all
Consistent
retirees.
with what we've done for the other retirements.
1 year basis. How many applicants did we have for the elementary vice principal?
4.
5.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? So I have a question before we vote. Sorry. So if we vote that we approve the consent agenda, we're saying that we approve all those hires?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can abstain, vote for, vote against, and then specify what, if any.
Here or later?
If you have concerns, we
If you have
can go
concerns, you
into
can
a
speak to us.
session, and we can approve that later. Correct?
Yeah, well, we vote on it right now, and if it doesn't pass, then we have executive session, discuss why, and then we come back to open session.
Okay, all in favor?
Was
I
there,
would go curious to know the reasoning, so yeah. I would like to have more discussion on it, I suppose now. Can I rescind my motion?
so it was motioned, it was seconded, called for a vote, did we finish the vote, is the question?
One person raised their hand.
So there was 1 for, any against, or
Any
any
abstain?
I guess I would like to know any reasons that, I mean, if there's a concern, I wanna know about it.
I would
but-
abstain.
I'm abstaining until we have further discussion.
I will abstain.
Okay,
For the discussion.
so we probably ought to move to executive, I don't know, because,
Can we do it at the end, or?
We can finish,
Yeah,
go
finish
on
this
to
and,
the old business.
right, we can finish the rest.
okay, we'll go ahead and finish the meeting. Okay, let's go on to old business. As far as I was told, there is none. And new business are the NEA contract and the OSEA contracts. Do we need to vote on those, or
The board does need to vote on that. Are there any questions?
are there any questions on either of the contracts that we came to agreement on with the people? Okay,
Those have both been approved by the,
Both unions have
both
approved
unions
this.
have approved them. Okay, so if someone wanna make a, will you both of them at once?
I would make a motion that we accept the NEA contract and the OSEA contract.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. There is nothing on the board study that I was aware of. So unless there's any questions, we're adjourned.
We'll adjourn the,
Adjourned and go into executive session.
and then we'll come back into public session, so if anybody wants to wait around for the decision when we come back into open session. Okay?
I plan on waiting, but if it's information I can provide, then I can kind of.
We can invite you.
Yes.
Certainly, perhaps, whatever questions